What's up, y'all? I'm going to talk about the two absolutely necessary essential mods that you got to get on your Ninja 400. So like straight stock out of the factory, this thing doesn't quite run right, and there's two main reasons why. So the very first extremely essential mod that you're going to need is a clutch return spring. Right now I have a return spring on it, and it's really nice and springy. But I'll show you the spring right here, show you what I did. See this? This is aftermarket. It was really simple to do. Now I had to drill a hole right here. If you don't want to drill a hole right here, you could always add one right here. There's some manufacturers that offer some. Do you hear that click? Do you hear how it clicks in? You see how it's fully disengaged? Without this spring, just stock from the factory, if I go ahead and pull this off, I could still pull it back. See, it's not fully disengaged. It's a huge problem. See, without that spring on there, check this out. It doesn't. Now I have a little slack in here. I like a little slack, but it should still spring back. It doesn't, and it's so soft. Like the pull is just so extremely soft that I noticed when I first got this bike and I was going like 60 miles an hour down the road, 60 or more, the wind would pull the clutch in a little bit. I mean, that's way too soft. That's just absolutely terrible, and that's gonna burn up your clutch. I like to have it fully spring back, like with that spring on there. Like this, that does not work for me. So absolutely necessary is have a clutch return spring on this thing. Alright, so the second mod that's absolutely necessary on this 400 is your air fuel mixture at low RPM specifically. So this is a booster plug. I can link that in the description. This is a temperature sensor, and it actually reads a lower temperature than the actual air temperature outside, and it convinces the air fuel mixture to richen up the mix, and it smooths out lower RPM throttle. Now the big problem with this bike straight out of the factory is when you just roll off the throttle, it chokes out the gas. It's like an emission control thing for, you know, emission standards, and it's terrible. Like when I first got this thing, it was so jerky. Just if I was riding around town and I just barely disengaged this thing, it would just jolt me forward. Excessive engine braking, like just way too much. So you got to smooth out that jerkiness somehow, you know, in lower RPM, first gear range. Otherwise, when you go in like stop and go traffic, or if you're like at a stoplight or kind of cruising around town where there's cars in front of you, any kind of traffic, man, you'll be miserable. You'll be jerking around, jolting. Like when you're trying to ride smooth, you might be having a really good smooth throttle response, but you let go, it chokes off the gas, you're just jolting forward. It's a terrible experience. But yeah, so this booster plug works to smooth out that, and it lets the gas keep flowing into the engine even when you disengage the throttle. And you know, like I said, it also richens up the mix, which stock these come like way too lean, under 6,000 RPM, which is once again, I think it's an emission control thing. So you absolutely have to do something about that if you want to have an optimal riding experience. Now this booster plug is fantastic because you do not have to take out your ECU and go get it flashed. So the more permanent solution would just to be get my ECU flashed, but I did not want to take my ECU out and adjust it from stock. This is a slightly more subtle solution, but it still does the trick. But I think it's completely necessary, or you're just gonna have a miserable experience going slow on this bike. As well as, you know, the clutch cable, that is absolutely necessary. With those two things, this bike will be running the way it was intended to be running straight out of the factory. You especially need a booster plug or ECU flash if you have an aftermarket pipe, because these have less back pressure than the stock pipe. I put a baffle in there which adds some back pressure, but still, it's absolutely necessary to richen the fuel mix if you do that. But yeah, those are just the 2 absolute necessary mods. You could go crazy with your bikes, obviously. You could do all kinds of things with the suspension, brakes, but honestly, I think those 2 are the only absolutely necessary ones if you want to have an optimal experience out of the factory. You know, other stuff is just icing on the cake. So I'll go ahead and link both of those solutions in the description down below. And as always, thank you all for watching. We'll see you on the next one.